Chapter 4. This chapter proposes that where the necessary is taken care of, administration should be a straightforward task. Art can exemplify the unnecessary yet resists egalitarian principles, remaining a vehicle of, and liberally promoting, an elitism, an exclusivity that reflects economic and political force. Chapter 4, A Virtual Solution. Utopia, a word that means no place. More. In the social production of their existence, men inevitably enter into definite relations, which are independent of their will, namely relations of production appropriate to a given stage in the development of their material forces of production. The totality of these relations of production constitutes the economic structure of society, the real foundation, on which arises a legal and political superstructure and to which correspond definite forms of social consciousness. The mode of production of material life conditions the general process of social, political, and intellectual life. It is not the consciousness of men that determines their existence but their social existence that determines their consciousness. At a certain stage of development, the material productive forces of society come into conflict with the existing relations of production. From forms of development of the productive forces these relations turn into their fetters. Then begins an era of social revolution. Marx, K. Critique of Political Economy, p. 20. There is of course much more talk currently, in our capitalist age, of a digital revolution than of a social one, although the former is speculated upon as implying to some extent the latter. No social order ever disappears before all the productive forces, for which there is room in it, have been developed, and new higher relations of production never appear before the material conditions have matured in the womb of the old society. Ibid. Perhaps in the miraculous potential of the digital we are witnessing the culmination of our productive forces and the advent of new higher relations of production. Perhaps digitalization is a maieutic process and we can soon herald a new social order of immaterial conditions that have been matured in the womb of capital. While on the one hand capital must thus seek to pull down every local barrier to commerce, i.e. to exchange, in order to capture the whole world as its market, on the other hand it strives to destroy space by means of time, i.e. to restrict to a minimum the time required for movement from one place to another. The more developed capital is, and thus the more extensive the market through which it circulates and which constitutes the spatial route of its circulation, the more it will aspire to greater extension in space for its market, and thus to greater destruction of space by time. McClellan, D., Marx's Grundriss, p. 141. The destruction of space by time and the destruction of the material by the virtual, the digital revolution surely heralds a momentous fin de siècle. Once at a lecture of Bruce MacLean, he drew parallels between the political and military strategies of the Second World War and the contemporary art scene. Although presented in a jokey manner, the point was more than adequately made that art is administered and therefore inevitably followed political patterns. With the speculation over the advent of virtual reality, it is as if there is a whisper that peace may break out, and with it a wave of heady post-war idealism. It is presumably going to be a capitalist post-war, so in purely capitalist terms somebody is paying. What are they getting out of it? If postmodern consumers are slaves, then those who make the rules for consumption, the capitalists, are the masters. Together they produce the master-slave dialectic of late capitalism. Consuming more won't make the slaves masters, and becoming capitalists won't free them from the dialectic, for their power is constrained by the need for slaves to feed their profits. White and Hell Eric, Nietzsche at the Mall. The notion of the significance of the value of a personal metaphysics both pales and is magnified in the light of the constant competitive struggle of the rat race. If it exists, there is always the question of who for. There is a flourishing diversity of work exhibited in galleries, but this cannot disguise the infrastructure of hierarchies and the ensuing tendencies of a justification of form and process over an involved personal content. When the city can no longer be conceived materially or systematically, but can be seen as mental space, the question is, by whom and how will sensory experiences be shaped? How will the shapeless, the immaterial, be shaped? G. Love Inc., The Digital Dandy. Computer sales have given birth to the marketing idea of virtual reality as art, and its essential motivation may well imply something more than market share for the irresistible, digital entertainment, hotcakes. Like a force of nature, the digital age cannot be denied or stopped. Negroponte, being digital, p229. Everyone will have to jump on the bandwagon or be left behind. By way of the virtual, it is being sold as egalitarian and universal. Liberating certainly, but isn't it likely that those being liberated will tend to be those who already have everything? Consumers will have more to consume and producers more to produce in a virtual reality that is exponentially competitive. Sometimes less is more. The controllers will perhaps have less to do, and more time to do it in, as the masses are educated, entertained, and work sat as new age troglodytes in boxes 18 inches away from little screens, no longer needing to travel even for virtual holidays. Capital penetrates to the very DNA which allows us to replicate and makes us reproducers, makers of the same. We make children who will have good jobs and good spouses, and who will make good children who will have good jobs. Jobs always figure prominently in this economic scheme. We are producers of producing machines who are makers of machines. Capital replicates itself indirectly through the creation of progeny who act as job seekers and job holders. The value of the replicas predicated on the job worthiness of their progeny, and so the replicators will always strive to replicate, to produce more of the same. D. Rothletter, From False Consciousness to Viral Consciousness. In Gibson's cyberspace, horses are extinct and only exist in the virtual. The horse is traditionally a loaded symbol and metaphor. It represents power, freedom, mobility, wealth, and a domination of nature, a successful relationship to the land, and can even represent the people. But with electronic culture, no artifact remains. Culture, in a word, has been dematerialist. It only exists as a series of zeros and ones at the level of digital code. This is a formidably new process with huge psychological implications. How do you value what you cannot touch? Barless, the end of the word is nigh. The immaterial has a huge history of mysterious value. We need only consider religions, and especially the one true religion. Money itself has no value except as a token of exchange that reflects the less tangible negotiations of controlling infrastructures, or as Debord put it, secrecy dominates this world, and foremost as the secret of domination. The immaterial has traditionally functioned as a means of dividing up the material amongst conspirators, that are often quite happy to deny the value of the material, an interesting paradox. And what of those who are perhaps less immaterially adept? Shall they, spiritually, inherit the world? Shall they inherit immateriality in abundance? Technologies of networked communication offer remedies for the deracinated cultures of modernity. T. Druckery, Thinking Digital. Virtual reality may provide the most humane way of disposing of the alienated and marginalized. They call themselves Bitniks and Cibrians, their nuptials are in cyberspace. Today they are the Salon des Refuses, but their salon is not a café in Paris. Their salon is somewhere on the net. It is being digital. Negroponte, being digital, p226. Sending them off to the cyberspace equivalent of a remote colony where they can surrender themselves to the fashion and hype of virtual consumerism whilst wandering nomadically around the data universe, leaving reality to those who, either through nature or nurture, have mastered it. Especially if we consider that we will witness the loss of many jobs to wholly automated systems, which will soon transform the white-collar workplace to the same degree that it has already transformed the factory floor. Negroponte, being digital, p227. The material occupations of necessity have been hugely reduced even as the idea of what is necessary is enlarged, and it seems that even the immaterial sinecures need to be reconceived. We may as well all be artists. For an example of how the mysterious values of the immaterial are distilled, we might look into the realms of the arts, and more specifically at the sphere of fine art, the gallery, and the museum. Hypothetical values are negotiated so that the one is priceless and the other worthless, the one valid, the other redundant. Fine art practice has evolved towards a broad range of activities that could be less mysteriously defined as visual event design or gallery event design. This is due to the increasing familiarity with art in all its forms and its complete dependence on an ever more undefined yet increasingly controlled infrastructure. A delirium with process has quite recently gotten hold of us, and at the same time, a seizure or a delirium with responsibility, precisely because it is becoming increasingly elusive. Baudrillard, Reversion of History. You are either in or out, and out is nowhere. The lesson in authority is underscored. We are to be, as Nietzsche put it, without solitude one and all, unfree and ludicrously superficial. The diversity of fine art practice means that electronic art can enter the arena of the art gallery and so function as art without any hint of intrusion. At the moment, the idea of its irresistible novelty, as elsewhere, makes it seem as though it is getting a special case induction. It has appeared in galleries. It is therefore art and will be subject to the same rigorous socio-political rights of entry and patronage. The same open-ended discourse of critique and mediatization. Perhaps the most interesting aspect of digital art within the traditional gallery structure will be in its physical effect. The exhibition space is already gloriously antiseptic. If we combine with this the prophylactic effect of technology and the digital screen, we should be able to peruse the selected offerings without the slightest risk of infection. Its immateriality should oust any idea of physical value and desire for possession, and the tainted notions of bourgeois support will be restricted to the idea of gaining office. Artists could be seen as civil servants or corporate salarymen, fitting neatly into the standardized architecture of an intensely commodified culture, in a brave new world. The reign of art and aesthetics, as with memory, has been a kind of ordering and containment of illusion and its extreme effects, allowing a kind of sublimation of the total illusion of the world that would otherwise destroy us. The recent history of art in all its demonstrative posturing has been about finding forms of containment that allow for a shifting play of illusion. Virtual reality is being hyped and historicized, preempting its own existence, and promises through its virtuality a complete opening out of illusion within the realms of the digital. A multimedia language of illusion where everything is possible and can exist free from constraint because it is only virtual. In your mind you are free, in virtual reality you are free, etc. By entering into a gallery, objects and activities are magically transformed into art. By entering into the virtual gallery, everyone is a virtual artist and cannot be ignored in the virtual march of history. In the late 70s there was a scheme in Holland whereby state-registered artists were paid a set rate for a set number of works per annum. The results of this experiment were, as one might imagine, a short-lived godsend for the lesser artist and a vast accumulation of nothing, in terms of cultural significance. A waste of space, with regards the problems of stocking physical work that had no function in the cultural, socio-political infrastructures of art. Nothing underlines the uselessness of art more than this accumulation without a context. But if we think of a digital equivalent of this scheme, it becomes more viable and less shockingly wasteful than butter mountains or wine lakes. If the works were recorded digitally and incinerated, or preferably only ever existed digitally, a great waste of resources is avoided. Administration must be easier where there is nothing to administrate. Unemployment, ever a worry, is reduced. The artist is no longer a marginal and the infinite virtual resource is expanded. This would be especially valid if governments considered seriously that in this boundless and ubiquitous cosmography the invention of meaning is the essential task of both science and art. Multimedia telecommunications signals fundamental transformations of our social and cultural paradigms. Art is bound to traditional structures of exhibition, publication, consumption, and economics. The so-called digital superhighways should offer the opportunity for the development of new forms of propagation and dissemination of creative activity. Space, time, and interaction become the design parameters of the televirtual ambience, and the mass address of the televirtual ether can take the practice of art from the periphery into the center of all social discourse. J. Shaw, Art Science and Interactivity. Everyone will be an artist simply by entering into virtual reality, be they maximalist or minimalist, figurative or abstract, because art is a language and everyone will be anonymous yet part of the infinite, exponential, multiversal dialogue of digital consciousness. This kind of introduction to digital potential, as if the spoken word or the picture or the music, not to mention consciousness itself, had just been invented, underlines the fact that virtual reality is promoted essentially as an art phenomena preparing perception for an inevitable and ubiquitous digital presence. In the beginning was the idea, then came the sales pitch, and it was addressed to all and sundry. And we saw, from many angles and many perspectives, that it could only be good. Virtual reality is the new art that modern art has existed only to herald. It is the new reality that modernity only existed to herald, and of course none of this is as ridiculous as it sounds. Anything goes in an utopia for corporate and consumer expansion, protected from any hint of repression by the promised existence of a virtual freedom, here and now, there and forever. Nothing is true, everything is permitted. Hassan I Sabah.